Hello, welcome to Turning Pages. It's nice to be back in the studio today. In the past few months, Paul Brogan has been absent from the set, and unfortunately, I'm sorry to say that he passed away last month in November after some months of ill health. But this show began as a spin-off of Paul's program, Capital Area Chats, which he produced and hosted here at Concord Community TV for many years, actually. He was a frequent contributor to the Concord Patch newspaper, a much beloved member of our community and the theatrical community here in Concord. He is greatly, greatly missed. Paul and I collaborated with Laura Canoy on several literary events held at his beloved Concord Theater, now the Bank of New Hampshire stage. And I know that Paul would be pleased to have Laura sitting here with me and taking on the role of co-host for the program. So welcome, Laura. Thank you very much for accepting the invitation, and which means a lot to me. And I know that Paul would be grateful and glad. We had many wonderful conversations together here on this set with Paul when we would interview you or promote our events.
Right. It's big shoes to fill, to use an old cliche, and I'm as happy as I am to be with you, Margaret, because I love this program. I am very sad about Paul's departure, and I have been thinking about our tribute to him today, and he wrote 2 books, one of which I interviewed him for my podcast, Read Local NH, and I'd like to just share a little bit from his last book. I feel so sad saying that.
Yes,
it's called A Sprinkling of Stardust Over the Outhouse, Musings, Memories, Madness, and Pillow Talk. And this is a powerful memoir about growing up gay in small-town Concord, New Hampshire, in a strongly Catholic family in the 1960s and 70s. And Paul had many challenges around that, and he worked his way through them.
He was very honest in his depiction of them
very
as well.
honest. I mean, this is a powerful book. So I would just like to read a tiny bit from this because this sums up Paul's philosophy. He was just full of joy and full of life. He talks about all the stuff that happens in life. You know, life is full of, joys and disappointments. And then he says, the best thing we can do is take that stuff and put it where it belongs, in the outhouse. Deal with it, but then try to forget about it. Do not allow anger to spoil the next adventure or opportunity that might come your way. When I was a youngster and desperately wanted to play Peter Pan, I was told it would never happen. You're a boy. Boys never get to play Peter. It took a long time, but eventually I got to put on the tights and tunic. I'm getting choked up. All I had to do then was sprinkle fairy dust and fly to a land that was as magical as all those places I conjured as a child. Okay, I got through reading that.
Well, very well done, and thank you for sharing that. Paul lives on in his books, the one about the Concord Theater, now the Bank of New Hampshire stage, and A Sprinkling of Stardust Over the Outhouse, and they're all available at Gibson's Bookstore, which is my segue to welcome our wonderful guest today, Bookseller Ryan, who's here representing Gibson's Bookstore. And today we're going to talk about books, obviously, as you can see, spread out before us here. But it was sort of a year-end wrap-up, and then for people to be thinking about Christmas purchases. So we're going to talk about some of our favorites, and if we have time, talk about what might be coming up in 2026 that we're excited about. So welcome, Ryan. Thank you very much for being here
Thank you for having
bringing
me.
so many books.
So many.
Now, you, as a bookseller, you get to see all the books before the rest of us do, and you know what's coming out in advance. And I know a little bit about your reading taste, but would you like to share with the viewers what your favorite genres are to read and what you're really the expert about?
Yes, I am lovingly referred to as the Gibson's Queen of Scream. I am the horror girl. I am all horror all the time, and I dabble in other genres as well. I'll read anything, but horror is really where my heart and soul lies. I've always been a spooky kid since I could walk. Halloween's always been my favorite holiday. So when I realized that I could combine my love of Halloween and my love of books, it was truly mind-blowing for me, and it was life-changing. So, yeah, that's where I'm at.
Well, now, what titles stood out for you this year in terms of reader satisfaction of any genre? You can jump around out of the horror world if you wish.
I am going to start sort of horror adjacent.
Okay.
With Victorian Psycho. This book, we do shelve it in horror, but it is literary fiction that it's like American Psycho set in the Victorian age. You have this absolutely maniacal nanny, Winifred Naughty, who is just taking out this super rich family that she's a governess for one by one. And she's so far beneath them that they don't notice it's happening. Like, she's massacring them and they just aren't even paying attention.
And so the reader is following along as she's doing this. There's no secret about what's happening, except that the family is not.
Exactly. And it is hysterical. She is one of the funniest main characters I've ever read. It was so good. I read this literally as like a printed out PDF.
Wow.
And it was so early. And I read it and I was like, is this funny or am I broken? And so I handed it to one of my coworkers and I said, I need you to read this. And I need you to tell me if you think it's funny because I woke my husband up laughing. And so my coworker read it. She said, I'm so happy to tell you, it is hysterical. This book, as a like held together bound manuscript, traveled to almost every single staff member at Gibson's. I don't think we've ever had a book that was staff picked by so many people at the same time. It was the entire staff picks display in February.
Wow. That's cool.
I can't, and the cover glows in the dark.
Wow. Gosh, wow.
Yeah.
Well,
You, as Margaret said, you have so many books and you get all the early copies, and I think we're both a little bit jealous. That's wonderful. How do you divide up your reading time? Like, how do you prioritize? I mean, you probably feel that old phrase, right? Like, so many books, so little time. So how do you do that in your position?
I'm lucky enough that I am able to read multiple books at a time and remember the plot lines. It's one of the few skills that like really, really works well for a bookseller. That's like, oh, I can multitask really well. And also I have a very long commute to the bookstore. So I do a lot of audiobooks and I listen to them very quickly. I listen at 2x or faster, which my husband calls chipmunk speed.
I was just about to say, that sounds like Alvin and the Chipmunks.
But it's just, my brain can process it. Mm-hmm. So I will have an audiobook that I'm listening to in the car, when I'm playing on my phone, when I'm like relaxing. I have a book that I'm reading on my lunch break at the bookstore, and in like downtime, which this time of year there's none, but sometimes we have a little bit of downtime. And then I have a book that I keep by my bed that I read to fall asleep. And
Or to laugh and
wake my husband. So I always have at least 3 books going at a time.
I do too, actually.
Yeah.
I usually have 2 going. And you mentioned your husband, and my husband and I have a debate going on about when we say, nah, I'm not interested. So I'd love to know from you and Margaret, I have a 50-page rule. If it doesn't grab me in 50 pages, I'm busy, I have a huge stack of books, I move on. Do you guys have a 50-page rule, or?
No. Well, no. I do have a 50-page rule. So by 50 pages in, I have a very good sense about how I'm reacting to the book. If it's been sent by a publisher for a review or by an author for a blurb, I feel committed. I feel like it's my integrity to complete the book. I think they usually send books, or I'm asked by colleagues who write the kinds of books that I know well and genres that I read anyway, and the publishers that send me advance copies also have kind of figured out what appeals to me in fiction, nonfiction, whatever. But if it's a novel and if the characters aren't connecting with me, the plot might be interesting enough to draw me, so that I'll skim from page 51 on to the end maybe. Or the plot is intriguing, but the characters seem a little flat and aren't really exciting me, but I just want to see how it works out, so I will finish. So there are no wall bangers for me. I tend to just pretty much go all the way through.
Yeah, I'm actually very similar. I very rarely DNF a book, a do not finish a book. Every once in a while, I'll start one, an audiobook or what have you. And if it's not immediately grabbing me in that first chapter, I might say, oh, this is not the tone for me right now. And I'll just save it for later. Or I'll give it to someone else who I think, oh, you might like this. This one isn't for me. But honestly, once I start a book, I'm gonna finish it.
It's such an addiction. Once you're reading, I don't. And plus, I've just got this sort of compulsion to get to the end and hope that maybe along the way something will improve and it's not wonderful. But if it's a great book and I'm absolutely loving it, life stops for me. It just completely stops.
Right, and everyone else is annoying because they're in your way of reading this marvelous book. Yes, I understand that feeling.
The book manuscript sits neglected, and I'm reading this wonderful book. It's like, oh my gosh, this is the best thing. I wish I could write like this. I mean, it can be, I just get stuck in. Now, we've got lots of books on the table here, probably more than we'll get to talk about, but there will be a link to a list that can be printed out and taken to the bookstore that has all the titles on it and a little blurb, a little bit of information about them. So if we don't get to everything, rest assured that you will be able to access our full and complete lists later. So give us another title that stood out for you this year that you think is worthy of some camera time.
Yeah. James was a huge title this year. I mean, instant bestseller.
Even before the Pulitzer Prize?
Yeah. People caught onto this immediately. This is, and I'm gonna refer to my notes because I have some good quotes here from different blurbs, but this is a brilliant action-packed reimagining of the adventures of Huckleberry Finn. It is told from the slave, Jim's perspective. This is a fascinating, gorgeously written book that, I mean, I can't recommend highly enough, especially if you're a Huck Finn fan. God.
Well, we all had to read that, and
yeah,
at some point, so
exactly.
We may not remember it all terribly well, but Jim was a standout character in that, so it's great that he gets to tell his own story.
Exactly.
Did you venture into any new or different reading territory this year that maybe you were outside of genre that you normally read, or you were intrigued by something because of a review you read or an ARC that came into an advanced copy that came into the store?
I do dabble a little bit. One that I was really excited to jump so far out of my normal, I'm reading horror and slasher and terrible things. I was like, I'm going back to YA. I'm reading the new Hunger Games book. I love that series. Sunrise on the Reaping came out this year. And for any Hunger Games fans, this is Haymitch's Games. We've been wondering about what happened in Haymitch's Games for years. Now we know, and it will break your heart. It's fantastic.
Good.
Suzanne Collins does not miss. It is so good. And they've already dropped a teaser for the movie. It was I think they had the movie rights before the book was announced.
No doubt. Yes, that does happen.
Yeah, so.
All right, Laura, your turn.
Well, in terms of books that were outside my sort of genre, because as Margaret knows, I would read historical fiction all day long, if given the choice. But the great thing about hosting Read Local NH and now doing this show with you is it requires me to read outside of historical fiction. So, but for historical fiction first, I do want to mention a couple books in particular. This one, Katerine by Cynthia Neal. This is based on the life of, I need to put my glasses on. This is based on the life of a woman who really lived, a Native American leader. And with Ken Burns' series, focusing on the role of Iroquois people in the War for Independence and our nation's founding, this just feels highly, highly relevant to me right now. And people within the Indigenous community have had great things to say about this book. Actually, I've got a quote too. This book has earned praise from many, including Tony DiPlato an activist for Indigenous people who placed Neil's work within a wider literary tradition, adding it to the esteemed list of American writers like Leslie Marmon, Scott Momaday, Louise Erdrich, Sherman Alexie, and many others. And it's a powerful companion to the Ken Burns series. And Cynthia was on Read Local NH this year. So that was my big sort of historical fiction this year. Cynthia's 2 young adult books about Irish immigrants were re-released this year. They weren't new, but those are here too. A little bit outside my genre is Margaret Porter's book. It's not historical fiction, but it's romance, which
This is not
I
a paid
love.
promotion.
I love romance novels. I love a feel-good romance novel. I love a feel-good romance movie. Sequins and Starlight, Margaret was on the podcast in July. And it's a fun romantic romp through London, and it explores the world of dance, which I don't know anything about, ballet and burlesque,
Yes.
which I knew nothing about. So that's a lot of fun. Also within the history genre, but not historical fiction, for New Hampshire Book Fest this year in downtown Concord, I interviewed Lisa Rojak. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. This is nonfiction. This is about women who did what's called black propaganda within the OSS, which is the precursor to the CIA. Their job was to basically convince the Germans and the Japanese that their cause was lost and that they should just give up now. So that's my little history review. I have others, but yeah.
I will return the favor. Laura's debut novel, historical novel, The Shopkeeper of Alsace, is really special to me because I sort of followed its journey. And we had a conversation about this on Turning Pages and the October show, which is available on YouTube and is accessible. So she goes into depth about the story, the process of writing it, the process of getting published. But it's just really exciting to have it in print. And there was a massive event at the Bank of New Hampshire stage that was hosted by Gibson's, and many books were sold. It was a complete sellout event. There are a couple of other local authors that I would like to highlight. This book, Spirit in Creation, 2 Women, 1 Vision, Finding Peace and Truth in Creation, is wonderful. Marjorie Burke has written several memoirs that have and has had many events at Gibson's. And she and her friend Patricia O'Connor got together and went to different locations around New Hampshire, New England, and each would write a poem about them. And it's just really some lovely writing. You can dip in, you can read it all the way through, and it's just really a special book. And then another New Hampshire author, this is another debut author, which is a memoir written by Polly Merritt Ingraham, who is a teacher in one of the schools here in New Hampshire, but she was devoted to the teaching life. She married someone who decided to become a priest in the Episcopal Church, and Polly was not raised in a church-going family at all, and ultimately, her husband became the Episcopal Bishop of New Hampshire, with a lot of consequences to Polly's work life, having to move around, and family life, having to shepherd 3 kids while with a husband who had a job that took him out of the home and domestic situation a lot of the time. And so congratulations to Polly on that. And then the other one, this is a historical fiction colleague of mine in a writer's group that I'm in. This is her debut historical novel. And it's called Behold the Bird in Flight. And it's sort of biographical fiction, but it's somewhat speculative because the main character is Isabel, who became Queen of England, married to the evil, horrible King John of Magna Carta fame. And there's not a whole lot known about Isabel, about her life in France or as the Queen of England. And so Terry does a really great job of imagining what her life was like. And so
I'll have to borrow that from you.
Yes, that
sounds right up my alley.
It's really a lovely, impressive read. And so I look forward to what she has coming next. We can't talk about the books that we're giving to people for Christmas, which I know you probably all are, because that would be a spoiler. But Gibson's has gift cards, which make wonderful holiday presents, and the recipient is able to pick out their own book or a toy or games or literary type candles. I have to say that I'll be lighting my Jane Austen candle on her birthday on December 16th because I've been saving it. I think I bought it last spring or summer. It's like the Jane Austen candle. And it's like, oh my gosh, her 250th birthday is coming up. So I'm saving the candle for that particular day. So talking about the bookstore, you've sort of shifted from the marketing manager to manager of events. And what's that been like for you?
Yeah, it's been great. We had our dear Elizabeth was our events coordinator for the last 14 years. And she had a career change that she's very happy about. She went back to her library roots. She's doing wonderfully. I just saw her on Midnight Merriment.
Awesome.
And it was sort of a natural shift for me to step in and take over the events portion. She and I had been working very closely as a two-person team for the 13 years I've been there. So yeah, I went from doing all of the marketing at Gibson's, all the social media and making graphics and things like that, to now adding the events piece. So now I get to schedule author events
And you get to stay at the store later?
yeah,
On a lot of days.
It's a long day, but no, it's fun. Yeah. It's fun.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. Well, now Laura, you've got events coming up. Would you
do.
like to talk about any of those?
Yes. So I did a bunch of sort of launch events with bookstores and Franco-American Center because my book takes place in France. But in the new year, I'm going to work with some bookstores, but I'm doing a lot of library events, which I love because people who come to the library, they're such wonderful people, and our libraries, I just cherish them so much. So I'm so excited to work with libraries, and libraries create literate citizens. So I really have a little mini library tour coming up, and I'll put it on my website. I haven't got all the dates finalized, so that'll be on my website, lauraconoy.com, if I can say that.
Of course.
Since you mentioned memoir, Polly's memoir, I did want to highlight a memoir that was on Read Local NH this year. This was our March was Memoir Month. This is Child of Earth and Starry Heaven by Annette Binder. And it's about her taking care of her mother while her mother declined from Alzheimer's. And but it isn't just about the day-to-day struggles of caregiving. Annette just weaves in philosophy and religion and ancient cultures and modern science. And honestly, I don't know how she does it. And in the end, she finds that literature and ancient cultures like the Babylonians and the Greeks and the Romans kind of had more of this figured out than we do, even with all our modern science, just what it means to be human, what it means to lose your memories. My full disclosure, my father has Alzheimer's, and I shared this with my two sisters, and it's just beautiful. So anybody who has a loved one who's suffering from memory loss, I cannot recommend this book enough. So I wanted to put that in there.
Now, Laura, I'm curious to know if your shift from being a broadcaster to being a novelist changed the way that you read and analyze stories. As you know, when we're reading for a show that we're doing, or to research a subject that we're talking about on television or radio, we read differently than when we're reading and analyzing as an author, as a person who also creates a literary work. So I'm just curious about how that has been for you.
Right. Wow. It has changed the way I read. I mean, one of the nice things is doing journalism for 30 years. Nonfiction was my life. So now, as a not journalist, I mostly read fiction because I don't have to. I read local NH. I will read, like Bug Me is a beautiful book about bugs, and memoir and nonfiction. But I almost read exclusively fiction now because 30 years of nonfiction, I'm just kind of done with that. But the other thing is because I kind of sort of know what I'm doing now as a fiction writer, I'm able to discern what I like about a book and what I don't like about it. Like you said earlier, Margaret, like the dialogue is great, the characters are great, but the plot is sort of dragging. So I'm able to read it with those different elements in mind, whereas before it was just sort of, I love it, blah, I don't know why, but I love it. Very unsophisticated. And now, and I do feel like that's such a great question, because I do feel like having that knowledge and that personal experience allows me to be more patient with books than before. You know, well, the characters are kind of dragging, but this is an amazing plot, or this scenery, this setting is so fabulous. So yeah.
Really quickly, what are you looking forward to in 2026?
Oh,
Really quickly.
so many things. So many things. I have narrowed it down, I
Okay,
promise.
all right.
So I personally, as the horror person, there are so many horror novels coming out next year, but one that I wanted to shout out is called Headlights by C.J. Lead. This will be her third book. This comes out June 9th next year. And it's, I literally just started it. Like I downloaded the advanced reader copy on my computer like yesterday. It is being pitched as for fans of The Shining and Longlegs. It is a pulse-pounding hunt across the frozen wilderness of Colorado. And given what I know about CJ as a person and as a writer, this book is going to be gruesome, horrifying, and heartbreaking.
And you're going to love it, right?
And I will love every single moment. So that one is for me. For the Dungeon Crawler Carl fans, say that 3 times fast. Matt Dinniman has this series called Dungeon Crawler Carl. It has been sort of, he's had like a cult following for a while, but they've been, all of a sudden, they're being traditionally published, and they are exploding right now. There are 7 books out right now. Book 8 is coming out on, let's see, June 2nd. It's coming. It's called The Parade of Horribles. But for all of the rabid fans who are desperate, and I'm including my husband in this, he finished book 7 and just got sad for a while because he didn't have a new one. He has another book that is not part of the series that's coming out in February, and it's called Operation Bounce House, and it is a man who must fight for his planet against impossible odds when gamers from Earth attempt to remotely annihilate it.
Ooh.
That's a great plot.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's great.
So, you know, I know that everybody is like, you know, sitting on their hands waiting for book 8. But in the meantime, he's
There's
got
something
another
else.
one that
Cool.
can maybe satiate you.
That's great.
And then for sort of the more literary readers among us, we're getting a new George Saunders novel.
Yes.
Next year in January.
That'll be
Actually,
big.
It's coming up.
Yeah.
It's called Vigil. And this is a book that takes place at the bedside of an oil company CEO in the twilight hours of his life as he is ferried from this world into the next.
Ooh, it's like a landman
Yeah.
thing. Yeah,
it sounds
Neat.
beautiful.
Yeah, it does.
Oh.
My 2026, also in January, Nothing Random, Bennett Cerf and the Publishing House He Built by Gail Feldman. I've known this book was in the works for a really long time, and I wish it had been published before I was writing my novel about Phyllis Fraser, who became Mrs. Cerf later. But it didn't, but now it's coming out in January, which I'm really excited about, because just I love books about publishing and books and all that kind of thing, and editing and
nonfiction,
all
Margaret?
that. Yes, it's a biography, kind of a
Great.
biography of Random House itself,
Cool.
and how Bennett Cerf created it.
That'd be a nice pairing with your book.
Well,
Right.
yeah, okay. Kate Quinn's The Astral Library, which will be out in February. It's a departure for her into sort of more of a fantasy and thriller fantasy kind of thing. And then Catherine, which is a retelling of Wuthering Heights by a friend of mine, S.E. Fox, an English author. And her book Dangerous about Lord Byron is also on my list of recommendations. And Catherine Earnshaw rises from the grave to tell her own story and about her relationship with Heathcliff and all the others. And she Etsy writes great Gothic novels, and so
Oh my
that's
gosh.
just, I get tingled just thinking about it.
Oh
And
my gosh.
over to you.
Well,
quickly.
and that sounds amazing. And full disclosure, I've probably read Wuthering Heights 4 times, so maybe 5. There's something about that novel that really
Yeah.
captures me. So in January, on the 21st, I'm going to be at Gibson's with another debut historical fiction author, which I'm so excited about, Kelly Scarborough, Butterfly Games. This is historical fiction in the 1800s Swedish court, which I know a lot about France and some about Britain and Germany. I don't know anything about Sweden, but it looks like politics, romance, intrigue, and it just looks fantastic. So I'm excited about that in the new year.
Ooh, I am too.
Paula Meunier, who was at Gibson's last week, Ryan.
Yeah.
In a snowstorm.
Big snowstorm.
Yeah, but there were, let's just say there were very few people there. This is Paula's number 7 book in the Mercy Carr series, and we put the interview on YouTube because so many people couldn't come because of the snow. And number 8, from what I understand, is coming out sometime this year. And actually, Margaret, I don't know if we have time. Do you have anything coming out next year?
I have a book
working
I have a short story coming out on Friday in the Feisty Deeds 2 collaborative anthology by a group of historical fiction authors that are in a writers group that I have. And the first Feisty Deeds book was very popular, won numerous awards. This one is called Batches and Brews, and so it's got a food and drink kind of connection. And that's coming out on, that'll be available on Friday, actually. And my year ahead is writing, no publications. I've got to finish a book so I can have fun. Yeah, it takes time.
It takes a long time.
I want to thank both of you for being here. Ryan, thanks so much. Everybody go to Gibson's, ask Ryan what she's reading right now, and I'm sure she will have plenty of wonderful suggestions for you. Thank you, Laura, for agreeing to be my co-host.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure.
One thing I will say as we close, because Laura hosts the Read Local NH podcast here, also as part of the Concord Community TV family, we've decided that we will attempt, at least in the coming year, to do our shows in alternate months. Probably, and then maybe some months where we'll do consecutive shows. So Laura will be doing the podcast in January, and we'll both be doing Turning Pages in February, and so we've kind of mapped out a schedule. So that's our plan. We might stick to it. We'll see what happens.
It's more book talk for the Concord community.
More book talk for the Concord community.
And we can
Yes.
collaborate, and both of us have our own writing to do, so it's more books for you, Concord community, and a little less work maybe for us.
Yes, and hope to have some different kinds of conversations with, as we've done in the past, with book groups, with literacy programs, with publishers who have books coming out. So we've got lots of plans, and I thank Laura for her
You're welcome. My
involvement and collaboration. And thank you for watching, and many thanks to Concord TV for having us here. Thank you, Matt Arsenault, in our control room, and thanks to Emmett, who's manning a camera this afternoon, and we'll see you next time.